Hi book friends. Okay, so what we have here is I'm going to do my top 10-ish books from 2020. The reason I decided to go ahead and make a video out of this is, guys, I'm just a chatty lady. I like to talk, and it's just a lot easier for me to verbalize my thoughts when I'm kind of talking in a conversational manner versus trying to type it all out, especially when I'm doing non-spoiler stuff. So I'm just gonna show you guys what I came up with and tell you why I like them. These are not going to be book reviews. I'm hoping to keep this relatively short. So if you want book reviews for any of these, Mike has reviewed almost all of them. I would do the thing where I'm like, oh, I'll link his reviews below. But I'm pretty sure if you're watching this, you came here from Mike's Discord, so you don't need for me to teach you how like YouTube works. So anyway, if you want me to help you find any of those reviews, just let me know. But this is not going to be book reviews, guys. I'm not starting a booktube channel. It's just nice to have an outlet to kind of like talk about books versus just all day. So anyway, I do have a top 10, but I went ahead and added in 3 honorable mentions, and since I'm not really doing them in any particular order, we might as well just call this what it is, top 13. So, like I said, they're not in order. I'm just going to reach down, I'm going to grab a book, I'm going to tell you why I liked it. First up is Mistborn, and I grabbed Mistborn just to represent Mistborn Era 1. I read these books at the very beginning of 2020, is the first series I read in 2020, and I read them coming straight off of binge reading The Wheel of Time. So why I grabbed a series written by the same author who finished the series I just read, I don't know. But obviously it worked out fine because I loved it. It was a great change of pace from The Wheel of Time with still some familiar elements. Mistborn has a great cast of characters. It has awesome magic. And I know not everyone does audiobooks, but I do. And the narration is brilliant by Michael Kramer. So I really enjoyed this. And of course, I would highly recommend it to anyone, especially people who are kind of like getting into fantasy for the first time. This is a really good starting point. Okay, next is Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. This is another one of my honorable mentions. I didn't even plan on reading this in 2020, but I think right after Fright Fest, Mike, like after Weave World, I'm pretty sure he just decided to pick this up. And so I was like, well, I guess I will too, because I wanted to read this for sure. I already owned it. But I knew that when I did read it, there probably wasn't going to be a big crowd reading along, which is funny because now there's a crowd reading this. But anyway, at the time, I was like, if I don't read it with him now, I'm going to be reading this alone. So I picked it up kind of at the last minute, and it's awesome, you guys. Christopher Rocchio can write. The story was cool. The characters are great, but honestly, his writing style just blew me away. So again, I'm really excited to continue this series in 2021. Hopefully have it finished up this spring. But this one caught me by surprise, and I wanted to definitely mention it. Next is Joe Abercrombie, and the way he structures his story is there's a trilogy called The First Law, and then there are 3 standalones, and then there's another in-progress trilogy. I read the first trilogy in 2019. Otherwise, it would be dominating this list because I love Joe Abercrombie, and the man can do no wrong in my eyes. But anyway, I grabbed Best Served Cold to kind of represent the standalones because I enjoyed all 3 of them a ton. Best Served Cold, if I had to pick one of the standalones, is probably my favorite. But honestly, I loved them all, and I wanted those standalones to get some representation because I did read them this year, and I love them. I didn't really come up with a plan of where to put these books after I was done talking about them. Okay, so now those are my honorable mentions. So I'm going to go ahead and get down to the real top 10, I guess. First up is Changes by Jim Butcher. I have read all of the Dresden Files up until Changes in 2020. And actually, the book that comes after this, Ghost Story, is going to be my final book of 2020. I'm reading it right now. But Changes, far and away, has been the best book of the series so far. I've liked every one of them. I think Changes is book 12, I believe, or 13. It doesn't matter. I liked them all, but this book was really awesome. Like some moments that I still catch myself thinking about. So I won't go into too much detail about it because, like I said, it's book 13 in a series. Don't quote me on that. But this series has been really fun all year, and Changes definitely is a fave. You guys already know. Kings of the Wild. Gosh, I don't want to make a bold statement and say that this is my favorite book of the year, because as you're about to see, like, I've read some really good books this year. I'm not naive. Like, I know that this book is what it is, but guys, I love this book. To me, it's just so, it has everything, guys. People talk so much about the humor, and they talk about the rock and roll references, and they talk about the character work. But it's just a good book too. The story is good. It has heart. It has action. It has a good plot, and it has characters that are just some of the best characters I've ever read. So I don't need to just sit here and gush about this, because that's what I do all the time. You guys already know that I love Kings of the Wild, but it would not be my top 10 list without Kings of the Wild, because this is easily one of my very favorite books I read all year. If I were making like this tier list, not a tier list, if I were making this top 10 list in order, this would be in my top 3. I just didn't go that far into it. I just love it so much, you guys. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is Morning Star from Red Rising. Are we calling that 2 trilogies that he's doing, or is it a 6-book series? I'm going to call it 2 trilogies. Red Rising by Pierce Brown is a sci-fi series, and this is book 3 of the series. Everyone knows how it goes with Red Rising. The first book is called Red Rising. It's okay. It was pretty good. I liked it. It was fine. But Golden Sun and Morning Star, the books that follow Red Rising, are so good. And Golden Sun seems to be the favorite, but I lean a little more towards Morning Star. I like how the world expanded, and I just like some of the twists and turns it took. So if you haven't read the Red Rising series, I highly recommend it. Personally, I have not gotten to the next 2 books, Iron Gold and Dark Age. I haven't read them yet. I'm going to read them in 2021, but Morning Star is the book I chose to represent that series, because if I had to pick one, I would say Morning Star is my favorite. Next up is Dune, and this is a book that was definitely influenced by Mike. I mean, most of my choices, Mike has probably read them and reviewed them, but this is one that is heavily influenced by Mike, and I'm so glad I picked it up, you guys. This story, I'm a rereader anyway, but this is something that I will definitely pick up over and over again throughout my life and continue to read, because I hate to be the person who says, oh, it's the blank version of blank story. If you like this, you'll also like that. But you guys know my love for A Song of Ice and Fire. And the whole time I was reading this, I just got vibes of Game of Thrones in space. And like, what's cooler than that? So like don't hold me to that. Like, I know people don't like those types of comparison recommendations, because obviously it's not the same story. But there was just enough of that, of the political scheming and the houses and just a new world that really captivated me. That I just got those vibes from it. And please know that coming from me, that's like highest praise. So this book, I cannot wait to reread it. I definitely plan to reread this and then finish some more of these Dune books before the movie comes out. But even without the movie in the future, I'm really looking forward to continuing this series in 2021. Okay, so I have my first, and I guess only, if you're not counting the honorable mentions, repeat author coming up. And I struggled with this because, well, I'll just tell you. The next one I'm going to do is Ruin by John Gwynne. And Ruin is book 3 of the Faithful and the Fallen series. I picked book 3 just to have a visual recommendation, but I'm calling it Faithful and the Fallen. I loved this series, and this is another one directly influenced by Mike. I only picked it up, I only know about it because of his recommendation. I loved this series. It has what I want when I'm reading fantasy. This is what I want, and I mean, gosh, I was so delightfully surprised by this series. These characters are people that are in my heart now. I mean, gosh, I don't want to say too much because the next one is Courage. Okay, so, or A Time of Courage, excuse me. So, Faithful and the Fallen is a 4-book series, and it's followed up by a sequel trilogy. I liked Faithful and the Fallen a lot more than I liked this sequel trilogy, which was called, what was this called? I don't even remember now. I don't remember. It'll come back to me, I'm sure. I'm sure it will. That's really going to bother me. Anyway, I preferred Faithful and the Fallen, the 4-book series, over the trilogy. But this book blew me away. Man, his writing in it, I felt like it was so elevated. It was probably one of the best large-scale battles I've ever read was in this book. So I went ahead and put them both on there because Faithful and the Fallen was just awesome. I've recommended it to so many people, and it's going to be a lifetime series for me. It's definitely a top 10 fantasy series for me. So I definitely put Ruin on there to represent Faithful and the Fallen, but I put A Time of Courage on there as a singular book. Again, the trilogy that it's a part of is very good. I would recommend it. I liked it. But this book just kind of blew my mind for some reason. And maybe I'm alone in that. Like, maybe it was just a time and a place thing. But this book, I was just like, he went from being, like, really good to being great in this book as an author, I feel like. So I wanted it to get recognition on there. So 2 John Gwynne books coming in hot on my top 10. This big boy right here, another recommendation from Mike. I was having some fantasy burnout. And so he recommended I do a Stephen King or Michael Crichton book as a palate cleanser. And so what did I choose? Like the longest book in the world. But the thing is, it worked perfectly. It was exactly what I needed when I needed it. This year, 2020, has been my year of trying Stephen King. And I've read different seasons, Pet Sematary, It, and The Stand. And I've loved them all. Like, I super jive with the way he writes characters, the way he writes dialogue, the way he makes everything feel so real, from the scary elements to even just like the mundane everyday elements. If an author can make something feel real, that really transports you. And that's, man, Stephen King is just like the GOAT when it comes to that. So anyway, I put It on there. I was kind of having trouble picking between The Stand and It, but when it comes down to it, I think It was the one for me. I really enjoyed this book. So we joke that I used like a 1,200 page book as a palate cleanser, but honestly, it was exactly what I needed when I needed it. It still has some of the magic elements, but it's definitely not, a standard fantasy book. And it was perfect timing because I read it right before Fright Fest. So I got my spooky book in, right around the time of October. Okay, next up, what should I do next? I'm going to go ahead and go for it, you guys. I put Brian Lee Durfee's The Blackest Heart in my top 10. I just finished this today, but I feel confident in this choice. So the book that comes before this is called The Forgetting Moon. Look at this boy. It's a big boy. The book before this is called The Forgetting Moon. It was awesome. I loved it. I loved it so much that the same day I finished it, I started this book. Guys, this series is incredibly underrated. I don't care how many people are reading it, not enough people are reading it. It gave me everything I want in a fantasy story. It had the tropes I like, but done really well. It has amazing pacing. It has cool magic. It has lots of different fantasy races. It has characters that are well written. They feel real. They are relatable. They're likable. I'm a character, dialogue over plot kind of person, but the plot in this just keeps you guessing, keeps you on your toes, but the twists and turns never felt like cheap or anything like that. I mean, maybe I'll do a review on this because I feel like I could talk about it for several minutes. It is just so good. So please pick this up in 2021. The Forgetting Moon is book 1. Book 3 should be coming out sometime in 2021. Maybe 2022. Don't quote me on that. I'm not getting that from a source. I just know that he has turned in the final draft to the publisher. But guys, I can't even tell you. I love this book so much that on the day I finished it, I put it on my top reads of 2020. Okay, so next I'm going to go with The Trouble with Peace from Joe Abercrombie. This is book 2 of his Age of Madness trilogy, which is, I told you, trilogy, 3 standalones, and another trilogy. So this is the In Progress trilogy. And this is the one that premiered in September of this year. The one that comes before this, I also read in 2020. It is, what do they call that one? A Little Hatred, right? I'm a bad fan. But I went back and forth between A Little Hatred and The Trouble with Peace, like which one I was going to pick to put on my favorites list, because I really liked both of them. And this might be somewhat of an unpopular opinion, because I feel like a lot of even Joe Abercrombie superfans were kind of like lukewarm on this book, and they just said it's fine, I'm not mad, you know, we'll call it middle book syndrome. But the more I think about it, I'm like, no, I really, really liked this book. There were some questionable choices he made at the ending that I'm like, okay, Joe, where are you going to go with this? But I trust him enough as an author that I'm not going to worry about it. I'm sure he has plans for some of those questionable decisions he made. But the more I think about it, if I had to pick one over the other, I think I liked this one a little better. So I went ahead and chose The Trouble with Peace to be represented. But anything Joe Abercrombie for me is an instant read. I'm not going to say with a straight face that he can do no wrong, because I'm sure it's possible that he could disappoint me. I just don't think it's going to happen. All right, that's going to lead me to my last one, which is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. So I guess I have 3 authors on here who made double appearances. What am I talking about? I chose Words of Radiance because, I mean, it's definitely my favorite of the 4. It's very closely tied with Way of Kings for me because I love the Bridge 4 storyline. Like, that just like gets me in the heart so good. But when I think about them as just individual books, Words of Radiance is my favorite of the Stormlight Archives that has been released. I read this. I actually read Wheel of Time all in a row. Then I read Mistborn Era 1 all in a row. And then I read all of Stormlight Archives and Warbreaker all in a row. So I had a lot of Sanderson at the beginning of the year. But that's when I read this, was in the beginning of 2020. And it's just an awesome, awesome story that I'm really excited to keep going with. So that's about it, guys. That's 13 books in my top 10. They're pretty impressive. So make your own video and I'll watch it, and just, I want to see your face and I want to hear you talk about your favorite books. So if you watched, thanks, I guess. And if you didn't watch and you just want to know what my top 10 is, you'll never know because you didn't hear me say this at the end. All right, I'm going now. Bye.